Inaugural Pauper whiskey play video series. What I've done for the month of January is spent about $5 on a deck that is going to get me two format staples, or actually multiple format staples. Really what I wanted to build this deck around is these two cards, Preordain and Lightning Bolt. So I built a blue-red deck, which in the parlance of our wizard card brethren is called the Is It group, but I like to call it So this is my TROG deck. The general premise of this deck was modeled on a popular metagame deck called the Is It Blitz deck. It is fairly popular. I guess it's only it's less than 1% of the meta. But you know, it's still a known tier 2 deck or whatever, so it's a good deck. And I went ahead and combined it with some elements from a red burn deck that's popular, and some of the Is It control deck stuff as well. So basically what I tried to make is a deck that runs 16 creatures that all really benefit from sorceries and instant spells. So the Delver of Secrets, he's a 1-drop blue spell. He starts out as a 1/1, but what's really cool about him is if you reveal a instant or sorcery at the beginning of your upkeep, he flips into a 3/2 flying creature, which is, you know, that's a very aggressive beatdown type creature for a 1-drop. So in turn 2, he could be a 3/2 creature already doing damage. The second creature is a 2-drop red. It's called a Kiln Fiend, and it gets +3 for every single instant and sorcery that I play. So every time I play a Lightning Bolt or a Firebolt or whatever, he gets +3. So if you play 2 of those per turn, he's already up to a 7/2. Thermal Alchemist is a defender, so he can't really attack, but he does a good job of defending. But the real upside of him is if you tap him, he does 1 damage to each opponent. And this is why he's really popular in burn decks, because he's basically doing direct damage over whatever the board state the defender has locked down. If your opponent has a good defensive board state, he can do damage right over the top of that. And then the second even cooler part about it is he untaps for every instant or sorcery you cast. So if your opponent has no way to deal with him, you got 4 mana open and the ability to cast 4 instant spells per turn. He could do 5 damage by himself per turn. The Nivix Cyclops is basically a buffed up Kiln Fiend. It starts out as a 1/4 defender, which means it can't attack, but anytime you cast an instant or sorcery, it gets +3/+0 and can attack. So with your first sorcery or instant spell per turn, it becomes a 4/4, and then a 7/4, a 10/4, etc. So with that being said, all of my spells are 1-drops because I want to be able to play as many of them as I can per turn to pump up the Nivix Cyclops and the Kiln Fiend, and to be able to trigger the Thermal Alchemist as well. So like I said, I'm running the Preordain and Lightning Bolt format staples. Preordain is going to help me look through my deck to find the spells I need. Ponder is kind of similar. I haven't really played with this one on Magic the Gathering Online, so I'll have to really kind of work on the make sure I have my clicks right, because sometimes the interface is a little confusing, and this card is confusing enough that I might have to make sure that I have everything right in how I'm using it. Preordain lets me scry 2 and draw a card. Lightning Bolt is very, very simple. I play 1 red and do 3 damage to creature or player. Vapor Snag, this is what I'm running to slow my opponent down, get rid of some of their creatures. It also does 1 direct damage, so it's still fitting into my direct damage theme of the deck. And it returns the target creature to its owner's hand, so hopefully that I can return a blocker and get one of my Kiln Fiend or Cyclopses through unblocked. Firebolt is similar to Lightning Bolt, except it's at sorcery speed. It only does 2 damage. The upside of it is I can flash it back for 5 later in the game, so I have something to do if I get a lot of extra mana. And I run out of cards in hand, because that can happen in red decks. Chain Lightning, it's basically a Lightning Bolt with a downside. The downside is if your opponent has 2 open red mana, they can copy it back at you. Now, then if you have 2 open red mana available as well, then you can copy it back at them, and, you know, whatever. So basically, if you casted this with 3 open red mana, they would never copy it, or it would be dumb of them to copy it. And this is the very interesting card. I'm not 100% sure how this is going to work for me because it's at sorcery speed, so I feel like the opponent might be able to deal with your creature. It'd be pretty obvious what I'm doing. So I have to cast it on a Kiln Fiend or a Cyclops to make them unblockable. So it'll pump them up 3 and make them unblockable. If I could pump them up additional times, I could end up with a game winner right there. I would hesitate to use this unless my opponent was tapped out, because there's so many ways they could deal with it. They could just kill off your Kiln Fiend or your Thermal Alchemist or sorry, your Cyclops or whatever. The upside of it is it doesn't hurt to use it because it does have flashback from the graveyard. So if you want to give it a try to see if they can deal with it, go ahead and try it. And then if it doesn't work, it ends up in the graveyard. Go ahead and flash it back later in the game when you know your opponent's tapped out and can't do anything. So I think it's going to work very, very well. Like I said, it's about a $5 deck. The real expense here would come if I optimize the sideboard, because the 2 best sideboard cards for this are going to be probably Pyroblast and Hydroblast, and they're both very expensive cards. Pretty much all of the red and blue sideboard cards are fairly expensive. They come from older sets, so I could easily take this $5 deck and turn it into a $105 deck by adding a full 15 card sideboard of the best cards. I'm not going to do that right now. I'm just going to go ahead and play through a few single game matches and see how I do, see what I feel like I need to add to it, and then go ahead and address the sideboard at that point with maybe some budget options. This is the same deck on the tapped out side, but I like their side as well because it shows you the mana curve. As you can see, I've got a total of 30 one-drop spells, so the majority of my curve is in that one-drop range. That's 26 instants and sorceries for 1-drop, and then 4 creatures, the Delver of Secrets. I got 8 creatures at the 2-drop level. That's the Kiln Fiend and the Thermal Alchemist. And then at the 3-drop level, I've got that Nevix Cyclops. So anyway, it's a very fast deck. As far as the mana base, I'm not 100% sure this is what I'm going to run. I'm going to run more islands because the Preordains and Ponders and Delver of Secrets are my most important 1-drop spells to help me cycle through my deck and find everything I need. So I'll probably want an island first, so I'm playing 8 of those. 6 mountains because I can find them with my Preordain and Ponder if I need them. And then 4 Swiftwater Cliffs. They come into the battlefield tapped. I'm not 100% sure I want to do this yet because I'm afraid it might slow my gameplay down a little too much. So I might end up just running like 11 islands and 7 mountains and not having any mana fixing and just relying on the Ponder and Preordain to do that part of it. But I'm not 100% sure about that either. So the first thing I like to do with any new deck is play it in a solitaire match. Just draw a hand and see how it looks. So I would actually like this hand. Yeah, so I think I'll keep this. It's got 2 mana sources, so it's going to do everything I need it to do. It's got a good threat in Delver of Secrets. It's got another good threat in Thermal Alchemist. And then it's got ways to search through my deck. So I'm going to go ahead and play it. And I'm just going to play through a couple turns here. So I would probably play the Delver first to see if I can get him to flip. So I revealed a card. It didn't work out for me, but Swiftwater Cliffs is going to be fine. I actually might play that right now. And then I'll ponder. So I'm going to look at the top 3 cards of my library. Oh. Doesn't really matter what order. And then I am going to shuffle my library because I didn't really like any of those cards. And I got a lightning bolt out of it, so that's good. So I move on to my next turn. I'd go ahead and attack with the Delver if they didn't have anything, but they probably would, so I wouldn't attack. But anyway, for the sake of this demonstration, I will. So I trigger the Delver of Secrets, Vapor Snag. So yes, that will flip the Delver, so I'll go ahead and do it. So the Delver of Secrets flips to a 3/2. Now this is where things get interesting. So I'm going to go ahead and add 1 red mana, 1 blue mana, play my Thermal Alchemist. I should have played him last turn to take advantage of some of the stuff I've been doing, but you never know. And then, why not go ahead and hit him with that Firebolt since it's the smaller one. I'll go ahead and hit myself for demonstration purposes. Alright, and I'll go ahead and fast forward through their turn just to show. And I would attack with that. And so I'll go ahead and show the real upside of this Thermal Alchemist now. So if they can't deal with the Thermal Alchemist, what I would do is I would do 1 damage. Okay. And then I would play, let's say, a Lightning Bolt. So the Thermal Alchemist untaps, Lightning Bolt goes through, tap Thermal Alchemist again, and then I would go ahead and do a, maybe they've got a creature out there, so I'm going to do a Vapor Snag. We'll go ahead and target our creature just for whatever. Flip my Thermal Alchemist again, do another damage with my Thermal Alchemist, and then finally do a Ponder. Okay. So I look at this. So I don't really need a mountain next turn. So what I would like to do is take the first card click will be the last card drawn. So I will do that, that, and that, and I will not shuffle the library. So I drew a Firebolt. But basically the upshot is I would have done 4 damage with my Thermal Alchemist last turn if they couldn't deal with it. And also had the ability to dork with their stuff and ponder to find new cards, all that kind of stuff. So I think it's a very cool deck. It combines some of the control of the blue decks that I really like with the direct damage of a red deck, and then the ability for that blue deck to find the damage spells for the red, because that's always the downside of the direct burn decks, is that you just run out of spells. Well, with Ponder and Preordain, you're never going to run out of spells with this deck. I'm just going to keep digging stuff up. So it should be a very efficient deck that I'm running multiple, hopefully I would be running multiple instants and sorceries per turn, and I'd be pumping up my creatures and tapping and retapping my Thermal Alchemist, that kind of stuff. So I think it's going to be a very fun deck. I have a feeling it's going to be very competitive. It might be a little too much for the casual lobby, so I might switch back to one of my dorky self-made self-made constructed decks and lose. But I have a feeling this will do pretty well there. Without the sideboard, I probably wouldn't do too great in a full match because people could sideboard in stuff against me and I wouldn't be able to sideboard in anything against them. But I still think it would be competitive. So I hope you guys liked my deck tech video. I'll probably do a video of the first match, single game match, and then call it a night after that.